Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mukelani Dimba. I'm a member of the steering committee of the OGP. Thank you so much for coming through today for us to have this open conversation. I'm hoping it's going to be an interactive session on the issue of legislative openness. We have a great panel in a very amazing venue to talk to this issue. It's just brilliant, isn't it? I have with me today people that I regard as leaders and champions of parliamentary engagement in the OGP. And each one of them will be giving us their own perspectives around how they see the issue of OGP engagement, parliamentary engagement in the OGP from different vantage positions. If you allow me, I would like to introduce members of the panel just quickly. Sitting right next to me is Senator Larraín from Chile, who's been the lead and co-chair of the Legislative Openness Working Group within OGP. Sitting next to him is Mr. Kent Wolek, who is the president of the NDI. And sitting next to him is Mr. Maurizio Lucana. Thank you. President of the Colombian Senate. And sitting next to him is Kahia Kallas, who is a member of a member of the European Parliament from Estonia. And last but not least, definitely, is Vuka Zinjanski from Serbia, representing a parliamentary monitoring organization. She will tell you a whole lot more about it. So, without further ado, I would like to start with Senator Larraín. You have been leading us within OGP on this subject matter. Why is it important for parliaments to be engaged in OGP?
Well, I would say that, starting hello, and thank you for being here. I would say that OGP is the right institution in the right time. That's because of its agenda. Its agenda is a necessary agenda nowadays, considering that through transparency and access to information, we can fight corruption, something we were speaking in the last panel here. We can, through accountability and responsiveness, ensure that people engage with their representatives, authorities. With this more information, we are sure that we can deepen democracy. Democracy is no longer vertical, but it's horizontal. You know, politicians are always looking at the mirror and seeing how they fit the band, the presidential band, right? But they should look at the mirror, we should look at the mirror and see that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We believe that we have 2 mouths and 1 ear, probably, because we talk too much and listen little. We have a new society, and we have to change our culture. And this agenda is useful for effectiveness in delivery, and that is something that we need to do in all our state, in all our society. And what I fear, or what we fear, is that when OGP, with this tremendous agenda, with this great methodology of action plans and independent review, what happens is that it's not committing all the state. It's only between governments and civil society. And the reality is that countries are much more than that. It's not only government. We have parliaments, and parliaments have been doing the job. In our country, we have action plans since 2014. And in several other countries, like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Colombia is starting one. France has one as well. Ukraine, Serbia, Ghana in Africa, Georgia. We're all committed to this as well. We should be part of this organization as such, not as people that come here to attend the meeting, but as a part of a very vivid organism that wants to really represent the whole society of a country. We think that the action plans government has to set upon each year through OGP, part of them need to be accomplished through laws. And if parliaments are not engaged, well, there'll be trouble. There'll be difficulties in passing the laws. The effectiveness of reforms, the delivery, needs not only the government, no matter how important it is in each state, it also needs and requires the rest of the society, being parliaments and politicians, a larger part of democracy. Government will represent the majority. The parliament will represent majorities and minorities. We are here with a delegation of Chilean parliament, which is bi-institutional, by Congress, the Senate and the House, and bipartisan, of all political parties, because we believe this is a state policy and not a political, ideological, or of part of a definite area of the society. In 2 words, we believe that countries have to be involved in this agenda. This is the agenda because not only is it time to change, but we're living in a change of time. We're living in a period of changing era, and we have to deal as such not only with part of our countries. That means parliaments, but it also means the judiciary, local government, regional government, the private sphere. With all due respect, with personal rights and intimacy, we need to have them as well. This is a new trend. And what I think is that OGP is giving steps. Today we're including in the action plans, parliamentary plans, but we should think more as a whole. So what I'm trying to do is to urge you to commit our countries to be part of OGP as such, and not only governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lorraine. Obviously, you have been involved in leading a lot of the activity that has emerged regarding engaging or getting parliaments incorporated into the OGP process, working together with the National Democratic Institute, which has led us as the steering committee to adopt a policy on how parliaments can be engaged in the OGP. Would you like, Mr. Warlock, to tell us a bit more about the sort of work that NDI has led, and what does this policy mean for parliaments?
Well, this has been a real partnership with the Congress of Chile and with Senator Lorraine. Maybe I can just sort of extrapolate a little bit of some of the things the Senator said and talked about sort of the new approach on parliamentary openness as part of the OGP. I think all of us have public opinion polls in their countries and political polls that show basically the same thing, and that is that citizens have feeling a disconnect between themselves and government. The capital of countries are, referred to as the city of sin, so far away. People are disillusioned and feeling that the institutions, the political institutions of the country, the governments, the parliaments, political parties, are not delivering on the promise of democracy. And when that happens, one of 2 things happen. Joseph Stiglitz, the famed economist, said one of 2 things will happen. People will go to the streets to solve problems, and the streets are not the place to resolve public policy issues, or they'll vote for a populist leader who promises to bring a people's democracy, and we all know what people's democracies look like. And we all are faced, whether you are new democracies, traditional democracies, with the rise of populist leaders, some more benign than others. And so I think the OGP filled an enormous need. A need, first of all, to create an international club of governments that understood this problem, were willing to share experiences and expertise on how to open government, but more importantly, the notion that there are avenues for constructive citizen engagement. And if there wasn't an OGP, it would have to be invented. Now, NDI felt in the Congress of Chile, as the senator said, that OGP needed to be politicized in the best sense of that word, that you had to extend the OGP to a larger political class of these countries for a whole variety of reasons that the senator talked about. And so therefore, this began the establishment of the Legislative Openness Working Group that the Congress of Chile and NDI co-chaired, and we were very, very grateful to the OGP, to the Secretariat of the OGP for understanding this sort of missing part of this important initiative. And it usually happens when governments get together, they think of governments and they think of ministries, they think of civil society, but they tend sometimes to overlook the institutions of representative democracy as well. So we were very grateful that there was a recognition of this, the idea that parliaments would play a role in the OGP, either by being part of the national action plan by governments or establishing its own action plans with civil society. Now, however, there is the recognition that the parliaments should be brought formally into the OGP mechanism. And so now, given this new approach and this new policy, parliaments will do one of three things. First of all, they can do all three perhaps, but first they would either be formally part of the government's national action plan, which will include the continuation of the independent review mechanisms, or as separate institutions, Parliament on the same time schedule, but parliaments can adopt its own action plan working with civil society, and there will also be a mechanism for an independent review of the work of the parliament and the action plans that would be developed with civil society. Or three, there can be a more informal a process whereby parliaments are not officially part of the OGP and the IRM, the review mechanism, but do this simply on a more informal basis. And so I think what the OGP recognized is that as political institutions, every parliament may approach this issue differently. But already we're seeing parliaments around the world, in every region of the world, beginning this process already. And there are close to 200 parliamentary monitoring organizations globally that are engaged in this, and up to 50 parliaments now, in one fashion or another, are engaged in the open parliament. And so we're very excited about that. I think that there's a great future, and I know now OGP is looking beyond national governments to sub-regional governments to engage them. So I think this is an evolving process, but it is moving in very, very positive directions.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a perfect segue to my next question, which is now looking at how is this actually working at national level? And I would like to invite the Senate President to give us some feel of how it's working in Colombia.
I will prefer speak in Spanish.
Spanish, that's perfect.
You can use your translation equipment. Then I can say in a better way what I want to say. En el Congreso de Colombia nosotros estamos trabajando en tres elementos fundamentales. Y yo diría en tres elementos fundamentales. El primero tiene que ver con la transparencia como un mecanismo muy importante. Todo el tema de la contratación del Congreso de la República, hicimos una alianza con un programa que tiene Colombia que se llama Colombia Compra Eficiente. Colombia Compra Eficiente implica que toda la contratación del Congreso se hace de manera transparente bajo unos mecanismos de compras estatales globales. Eso ha permitido que le genere mucha confianza a los ciudadanos en lo que tiene que ver con contratación pública del Congreso. Tenemos un tema muy estricto de asistencia. Nosotros nos dimos cuenta que uno de los grandes problemas que tenía el Congreso de Colombia y lo que a la gente más le importaba, aunque hay una discusión sobre eso, era que los congresistas no asistían a las sesiones y no debatían en las sesiones. Nosotros hoy todos los días tenemos dos indicadores, un indicador de asistencia y un indicador de permanencia, que lo publicamos todos los días en nuestra página web. lo publicamos todo y hacemos un promedio que se hace público a los medios de comunicación cada mes. Eso está haciendo que cuando yo llegue a ser presidente del Congreso, la permanencia en el Congreso de los congresistas en las sesiones era del 47%, hoy vamos en el 70% de permanencia de todos los senadores y los congresistas a todas las sesiones del Congreso en lo que tiene que ver con todo el tema de transparencia. El tercer elemento es las elecciones. Aquí hay una persona que nos ha acompañado y es que cuando vamos a hacer una elección, llámese de procurador o de magistrado, nosotros hacemos una elección con la sociedad civil donde invitamos, ponemos en la pública la hoja, en la página web pública, la hoja web de quien vamos a la hoja de vida de quien vamos a elegir, invitamos a decanos de universidades, a ciudadanos a que participen a través de las redes sociales, hacen, digamos, como todo un proceso de selección, critican la hoja de vida, la publicamos, hacemos una especie de audiencia pública y después elegimos. Es decir, todas las elecciones que hace el Congreso son con la ciudadanía y las hacemos con las universidades para elegir. Otro elemento que tiene que ver es, eso es lo que tiene que ver con temas de transparencia. En la otra línea de trabajo que tenemos en el Congreso de Colombia tiene que ver con cercanía a la comunidad, porque nosotros creemos que pues hay un gran problema, lo acaba de decir mi compañero de la NDI, en lo que tiene que ver con un problema de legitimidad. La gente elige el Congreso, elige a sus congresistas, representamos el pueblo, pero no saben qué estamos haciendo nosotros, no confían en lo que hacen los congresos, hay una especie de rompimiento entre los ciudadanos y sus instituciones, y en ese orden de ideas nosotros tenemos tres temas: una aplicación que la lanzamos en 20 días, que se llama Senador Virtual, se llama Mi Senador Virtual. Esa aplicación a través de los celulares, hoy está en prueba, ustedes ya la pueden mirar, la pueden bajar y va a permitir que cada ciudadano pueda saber qué hacen sus congresistas, cómo votan, votar los proyectos de ley como si fueran un senador que estuvieran en la plenaria del Senado, revisar la asistencia a sus senadores, comunicarse en tiempo real a través de Facebook o de Twitter por esa aplicación con cada uno de los senadores, hacer encuestas y esa aplicación, digamos, hoy está funcionando muy bien, se llama Mi Senador, la lanzamos en 20 días, llevamos 6 meses haciendo la aplicación y eso nos ha ayudado mucho a tener, digamos, un contacto, nos va a ayudar mucho a tener un contacto más real con los ciudadanos. Lo otro es que hacemos foros. El Congreso es una alianza con un medio de comunicación muy importante, una revista, y cada 8 días el Congreso va a las regiones con un tema en específico y con esa revista escuchamos todas las preocupaciones que tienen los ciudadanos. Otro elemento que estamos trabajando muy fuertemente es el tema de Open Data, todo el tema de datos abiertos. Nosotros recibimos al día más o menos 300 o 400 peticiones de los ciudadanos sobre información que quieren saber del Congreso y con base a eso escogimos cuáles son los temas que la gente más pregunta al Congreso y esos son los datos que estamos abriendo. O sea, estamos abriendo datos a la ciudadanía en conflictos de intereses de los congresistas, en todo el tema de información de cómo se hacen las leyes, temas de vamos a sacar un informe semestral de viajes parlamentarios, dónde viajan los parlamentarios, los gastos que tiene el Congreso, es decir, todo lo que a la gente más le importa es lo que estamos abriendo y finalmente pues tenemos ya para terminar, porque sé que me estoy alargando mucho, el tema del lobby. Nosotros estamos en este momento construyendo una ley de lobby, una ley para que sepamos cuál es la relación del Congreso con las empresas o las personas interesadas. Y esa ley que ya tiene un primer debate, lo que va a buscar fundamentalmente es tener registros públicos de cuál es nuestra relación con las empresas y con los ciudadanos y todo este tipo de lobby con el Congreso. Fundamentalmente eso es lo que estamos haciendo en el Congreso de Colombia. Este es nuestro plan, el que hicimos de Congreso Abierto con base a la alianza, porque sí creemos que los congresos se tienen que ganar la confianza de los ciudadanos, que hoy pues, es bastante difícil y tenemos bajos niveles de aprobación, yo diría que en todo el mundo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very interesting, one of the examples you used where you said merely publicizing attendance registers actually improved attendance by members of parliament. It's a great, great example of the impact of this open governance issue that we're talking about. Would like to hear a little bit more from the Honorable Kallas on the Estonian example, how you've tried to advance this concept of open government within the legislative bodies. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I think we all agree that democracy is based on trust, and people don't trust the things that they don't understand. So the procedures have to be transparent and understandable, so that the democracy would work properly, and people would also trust the laws that come out of it. So I think this is what everybody agrees upon. The question how to do it is of course different. One point, as was brought up by previous speaker, is to make it very transparent also, how the members of parliament are present, how they participate. I think this is important to understand what are their views, in which direction the discussion is going, and whom they represent. But at the same time, I'm a bit reluctant to say that the presence of the members of parliament is of the utmost importance, because it's not how much time you spend in the parliament, but what you do with it, what you do while you are there. And therefore, I think it is... the procedures is definitely something that is very important, but it's also important that everything that the government does, I mean, the government gathers a lot of data, whether it's about climate, pollution levels, whatever. So the governments have a lot of data. This data can be put into very good use by civil society, by citizens, by companies who can build on this, because the power of data is that you don't know what you can make out of it until you have it. So you don't really know what you can build upon that. And the more you have it, the better. And the governments have a lot of it. And I'm not, of course, talking about personal data, but I'm talking about governmental data. So by making this open, you can have solutions to the problems that we have had, and the problems can be actually the solutions can be provided by people outside the government, outside the legislature. So I think this cooperation there is very important, that the governments don't keep all the data to themselves. Of course, I have two hats on. So I'm still a member of European Parliament, and at the same time I'm Estonian, a very proud Estonian. So we have done a lot in Estonia regarding e-governance and everything related to that. We are doing our first steps on the open data, and how to make it reusable and really that the data is of quality. So there we are making first steps, but it's going quite well. And coming back to the procedures part, I think it's also important how you engage citizens in the lawmaking process. So as I mentioned before, we are the e-state, so digital state, and we have had experiences where we try to not crowdsource, but still that people can put their ideas forward for laws. And two attempts haven't gone so well, but now we have this new attempt that is actually going quite well, in a sense that it's combined with the law. So not only that the citizens can propose ideas, but also the law says that if you have enough signatures, then the parliament has to take it into process and debate about this. So I think the combination of the two is very important.
Thank you so much. We would like to get a perspective from VUCA, who represents a parliamentary monitoring organization. How are you experiencing all of these innovations from the perspective of a user, and also to hear a bit more about what is happening in Serbia on these issues?
Thank you so much. And of course, we're here to celebrate the recognition of like having Parliament as a part of OGP, because I guess this panel is small to put all people who put so much effort to have Parliament recognized by OGP, especially because when we talk about the open government partnership, we are actually, as Senator Lorraine, talking here about bringing the change, in the society where we not talk about the single piece of legislation or a single piece of policy. We actually talk about making decision-making processes more effective, which is, of course, bringing a group of people into the process. We are talking about making that process more transparent, and, of course, talking about accountability of decision makers who actually should be accountable in front of the citizens. So having Parliament within this platform and agenda is really crucial. So, of course, let's celebrate that. On the other hand, I think that the process itself should not be just and should not be discussed as a process, but let's talk about the quality of those processes. And when we talk about Serbia case, last year, I could proudly stood up here and talk about really great successes that Serbian Parliamentary Monitoring Organization, but general civil society organization in Serbia and Serbian Parliament did a really great job. We formed a parliamentary group for open parliament. We together made the Parliament Week, which brought 100 organizations and schools talking about parliamentary democracy. But this year we also did the Parliament Week, but unfortunately with the new convocation we failed in forming or re-establishing this parliamentary group for open parliament. So to me it's very important, of course, to have a strong civil society organization, to have decision makers together discussing the processes, but as I said, to me it's most important to talk about the quality of those democratic processes, because that can bring sustainable change that we want to actually have in our societies. So all in all, happy to have Parliament. We have a big delegation here from Serbia. We have a new action plan. Unfortunately, Parliament is not the part of a national action plan because we had this pre-election period, and unfortunately, Parliament didn't have the capacity to be involved in this process, but hopefully with a strong civil society, we will have enough power to push Parliament in this direction to be the part of OGP National Action Plan. So,
Thank you so much, Vuka. I have lots and lots of questions for my panelists, but I will not. I'll hold off for a while and allow you, ladies and gentlemen, to make your contributions, whether it's questions or additions. We would like to hear what is happening in other countries, different examples that will inspire us all in this new phase of OGP, of engaging Parliament. So I'll take the first round of questions will be 3 questions to any of my panelists. So I will start there, and then number 2, Simon, and number 3, no. Is there number 3? No? Okay, let's start with those 2. Over to you, ma'am. And
Thank
she'll
you.
be asking in Spanish?
Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah. Sí, me gustaría que nos comenten sobre la parte de sociedad civil trabajando con políticos en materia de co-creación, es decir, que las dos partes trabajen por igual en un diálogo y en una forma de tomar una decisión donde ambas partes sean tomadas en cuenta sus intenciones. El problema es que muchas veces los parlamentarios toman sus ideas y las llevan a ejecutar, pero no contemplan lo que la sociedad civil quiere.
can I ask Simon to ask his question, and then I'll come to the panel.
Thanks, Mukulani. My name's Simon Burrell. I'm Director of Involve in the UK. Excuse me. I'm interested in how the culture of parliaments can be quite unreceptive to this, we find, in that representatives quite rightly play a very particular role in society, and they can find the challenge of being more open quite difficult. There are some who are really quite reforming and really up for this, but many not. So I'm interested in how you've gone about changing the culture of parliaments and what sorts of arguments work well with members who may be quite sceptical, and indeed, possibly rightly. I think from Estonia you highlighted the challenge of transparency and what does transparency really mean. Actually, perhaps quite rightly worried about the incentives that the wrong sort of openness might set up for them. So how do you get the arguments to actually work inside parliaments?
Yeah, Senate President Maurizio.
Yo quiero responder un poco la pregunta que tú hiciste, que es muy importante. O sea, lo que nos está pasando en los parlamentos es que nosotros hacemos cosas y decimos cosas que muchas veces a la gente no le importan ni le interesan. Casi que los parlamentos vienen una especie de burbuja donde uno cree que lo que le preocupa a uno es lo que le está preocupando a la gente, porque como la gente lo elige a uno, entonces uno cree que está haciendo lo correcto. Y eso no es tan cierto siempre. En el plan de Colombia, por ejemplo, nosotros lo hicimos con la sociedad civil. O sea, nosotros reunimos más de 15 o 20 organizaciones de la sociedad civil y con ellos creamos este plan de transparencia. El que lanzamos hace ya varios días, el que les estaba contando, fue hecho todo con la sociedad civil. Ellos eran los que nos decían cuáles eran sus preocupaciones, qué era lo que querían escuchar, y nos han ayudado mucho. Son más de 30 organizaciones. De hecho, aquí hay una directora de justicia que nos ayudó a hacer este plan, y el plan ha sido hecho todo con la sociedad civil. Y frente a la respuesta de la persona de UK, digamos que cambiar la cultura de los parlamentos no es fácil, y digamos, yo no creo que se logre en periodos cortos de tiempo, se requieren esfuerzos muy grandes. Pero algo que me ha funcionado a mí, porque eso generalmente no se logra por convencimiento, sino muchas veces un poco como buscando aliados estratégicos, es tener a los medios de comunicación como aliados. Algo que a los parlamentarios les da mucho temor y que viven muy asustados es lo que los medios de comunicación dicen de ellos. Entonces, muchas de estas cosas que yo hago, hay parlamentarios que no les gusta mucho, es verdad, les parece que es demasiado fuerte para ellos, pero cuando yo vuelvo a los medios de comunicación aliados del Congreso, la gente sí acepta las cosas. Por ejemplo, el indicador de asistencia, yo lo saco mensualmente y los medios de comunicación todos replican el senador más ausente, el senador que más asiste, el senador más trabajador, el que más proyectos de ley presenta. Entonces, no es solo lo que yo diga como presidente del Congreso y lo que diga el Congreso, sino que como todos salen los medios de comunicación, los pone a que el Congreso cambie la cultura, porque todo el mundo está pendiente mucho de lo que los medios digan. Entonces, eso me ha ayudado mucho a cambiar la cultura, es tener como aliados a los medios de comunicación, porque ellos sí le tienen miedo a los parlamentarios. Ese ha sido como el elemento que me ha ayudado a cambiar la cultura, no siempre por las buenas, pero que ha ayudado mucho a que el Congreso mejore. Es un proceso difícil.
Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. First, I must say that we still have a representative democracy, which means that if ideas are presented, it doesn't mean that the parliament will one-on-one adopt the ideas that have been presented, because the parliament still has and has to have a right to debate the issues, and parliaments usually have more information as well that might just influence the decision. So I think that this cooperation has to work well. What comes to the cultures, then I have two experiences. One is I was a member of Estonian Parliament, and now I'm a member of European Parliament. And in the European Parliament, I clearly see the cultural differences between different countries and different representatives of different countries. For example, the representatives from Nordic countries as well as Netherlands, they are very much pro transparency, that all the costs that we spend and use had to be really transparent, because we are used to that in our home country, whereas the southern part of Europe, they are not used to these things, and they also are really reluctant on doing these things transparently, and I can also understand where they're coming from, because they say that members of parliament have to have some sort of freedom as well. If everything has to be very transparent, then meetings just move under ground, so to speak. So there are clearly cultural differences. How to change that? Of course, talking about these things, and the pressure has to come from outside, from the public as well, that they need to know.
Senator Lorraine?
Well, I think that what she said is part of the truth. There's a tension between civil societies and parliaments. Probably parliaments think that we represent the people and civil society will represent some interest group, or we don't know, we're not forced to do what civil society wants to, or things of that sort. But it's also a question of good faith on how we understand each other. And there is a good variety of civil societies. And in fact, our experience has been a good one. We meet with them, we work with them, our action plans, we have independent review of our action plans. And at the same time, not only in Chile, but also in Parlamérica, which is an organization of parliaments and parliamentarians from the continent, North, Central, and South America. It's called Parlamérica, and it's under the umbrella of OAS, Organization of American States. We drafted a map road of openness. We have within this organization, a parliamentary network for open government. And we wrote this map route. It's very interesting, this map. This roadmap towards legislative openness. It was firstly designed in a meeting we had in Paris, in Buenos Aires. Kind of a difference. Well, Buenos Aires used to be our Paris, but probably not anymore. Well,
Now it's Santiago.
now it's Santiago. And with a group of civil society of all the region. And then, in a meeting of the members of parliaments in Paraguay, we approved it. So we've been trying to put civil society in a strong relation. And this has helped to nurture our culture and to help develop different lines in this integration. Because at the end, as the gentleman was about saying, this is a question of culture. It's very difficult to change the culture of a secret way of working to an open way of working, a culture of transparency. And it is not only, it's not a question of ideology. The elder members of parliament have more difficulties in joining the new ways of doing the parliamentary job, the legislative job. And that's because, well, new guys or girls know how to work with internet. They are very responsive to Twitter and all those networks, social networks, whereas the elder guys, no, they don't like to work with them. So it's a real change. But as I said, we are living a time of change, of tremendous change, where probably the most relevant ingredient is internet, the digital area, or whatever, is change. And it's sort of a perpetual change. It's not that we change from A to B. It's a transition that it's endless. Each day we have a new change. Probably in the Middle Ages, nothing happened in a century. Today, several things happen in a day. This difference is what we need to understand. If we, who are distrusted, as it was previously said, by the people, because we are not delivering right answers, but also because we're looking indoor, living behind the walls in a black box. We won't really understand, and people will just bypass the Congress. Last idea,
Conclusion.
if we want to represent the people, we have to talk to the people, to listen to the people. If not, they will create different groups, civil societies or whatever, and they will just jump the Congress. So it's a survival question.
I've stopped you because I wanted to support you. I wanted to add that in addition to the changes that we're talking about, it's not just from closed to open systems. It's also changing the relationship, the type of the relationship, from a confrontational relationship to a collaborative relationship. And I think that's the challenge that all countries that are in OGP are going to have to be faced with, to change the nature of the relationship, because OGP requires a partnership between government and civil society. And also now that you're bringing in legislatures, it's going to be a relationship and a partnership, a strong one, between civil society and parliaments. Ken.
I'd like to go back to the point that was raised about providing incentives. I don't necessarily agree that it's harder to engage Parliament than it is to engage executive branch. If I'm working in a government ministry that is part of the OGP process, ultimately speaking, my job does not relate, I'm not accountable to people, I'm not accountable to civil society, I'm ultimately accountable to the minister. And if I'm a minister, I'm not accountable to civil society or the citizenry. I'm accountable to the prime minister or the president. So the incentives for government is not there. It is, in a sense, almost an unnatural act for governments to be engaged directly with civil society, which is, I think, one of the important parts of the OGP, because it provides external incentives for reform, not internal incentives for reform. But parliaments are different. Yes, there are attitudes that the senator alluded to, that parliaments believe that they represent the people, not civil society, and the role of political parties or parliaments is to try to aggregate the interests of civil society. But at the same time, they also recognize that they can be voted out of office. So ultimately, if they are not responding to demands, that can have an impact at the ballot box at the next election. And so therefore, that internal incentives for reform work toward creating the partnerships between civil society and parliament. Now, sometimes it's the result of enlightened leadership of legislatures, and we have one example here, but it's also reformers within parliaments, and we have another example to my left, who are also engaged in this that can create critical masses. And of course, it's more difficult in parliaments because you have to build consensus among parties across the political spectrum. But there are avenues to do this, either by the leadership or by reformers within parliaments. And ultimately, the incentives are internal incentives, and those can be used by civil society to create a spark and to sustain this type of partnership and relationship.
Thank you, Ken. Vuka, would you like to weigh in on
just
that
in
question?
brief, about that tension between civil society organizations and those suggestions or proposals that come from civil society organizations to the parliament. I think what Senator Lorraine just said is a question of good faith. And that's just one part. The second part is actually the role of civil society organization and decision makers or politicians. And I think if we put and be clear on the roles in democratic society, then we can talk about collaboration, then we can talk about different strategies or information strategy, cooperation, whatever, But if we are not clear on what's the role of civil society organization and the parliamentarians, for example, here, then mess is on, And of course that, whatever it comes from civil society organization is accepted by MPs or MEPs, that's great. If they take it, it's really our win, it's a citizen's win. Because, you know, like if we talk about the civil society organization, we don't want to be on the power. We want to, you know, like talk in front of the citizens and talk about equal rights, you know, like, and different issues. But the politicians are those who are fighting to get on the power, you know. So it's about the role. And about the culture, we actually, you know, talk about this invisible power that nobody actually questions. You know, we take it as granted. So it's a huge work behind. And I think that the public pressure is important. And again, to come back, strong civil society. So when we reveal the work of the parliamentarians, you know, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, you could hear just about 20 MPs out of 250 in media, you know, in newspapers, those leaders. But when we started talking about, you know, like what's going on in the parliament and revealing the decision makers, you know, the voting records, the transcripts, things slightly, you know, like start changing. So it's a public pressure in these changing the culture, really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, I saw you grab the mic. Did you want to?
No.
Ah, that's fabulous. No, we have just 3 more minutes before the end of the session. What I wanted to add was that obviously you are all aware that the OGP Steering Committee has adopted this policy on incorporation of parliaments in the OGP. I'm just going to mention 3 key features of that policy. The first one is that OGP recognizes the principle of total government. And so there's always this issue around when we look at national action plans, are they government plans or are they national country plans? The position the steering committee has taken is that the national action plans are exactly that. They are country plans. And therefore what we are supporting and encouraging is a single plan that contains a separate chapter that addresses the parliamentary question or parliamentary commitments. The second principle is that the processes at Parliament need to be consistent with the general process for that specific country. By this, I mean you need to be consistent with all the timelines for review in terms of the IRM. You need to be consistent with all the consultation and co-creation requirements for drafting your national action plan. And then lastly, the issue around synergy, creating synergy between Parliament and the executive. We have recommended that there should be a lead, a parliamentary lead, who is going to be a responsible person for driving the process within the parliamentary sector. But that person needs to have a seat, a formal seat in the permanent dialogue mechanism of that country. So those are the 3 key features of this policy. And I would like to encourage all of you to look into the policy and test it out and try it out, because really parliaments, I always say, are the true representatives of the people. Whatever government is doing on behalf of the people, Parliament needs to be the eyes and ears of the people. And so the issue of openness of Parliament itself, on how they exercise this responsibility of being the eyes and ears, is terribly critical. I'm going to allow any member of my panel one last remark, and then we close off. Senator Lorraine? Okay.
Oh, thank you. Just to mention that 4 or 5 years ago, by chance, I was in a meeting of OGP before it was launched. And I was the only member of parliament. I was by chance there. Now things have changed. There are lots of members of parliament here. And as Mukelambi is explaining, OGP has admitted in some way the role of parliaments in the institution. But perhaps I'm too ambitious. I think it's not enough. I would like that members of parliament be a part of the steering committee and not only a part of the delegation of some governments. It's very difficult, I know. But I attended yesterday the steering committee meeting, and there were only governments and civil society sitting in the table. I was just somewhere near the bathroom, near the toilets. And I think we have to change. We have given a great step, I admit, but we have to look forward because at the end, OGP has not to be only a government institution, but a state institution or a society institution. I'm still hoping that then someday this institution will be called OSP, for Open Society Partnership or for Open State Partnership, meaning that all the country, all its institutions form part of it, and they're all committed to this tremendous state reform, which is the key for getting into the future.
Thank you so much, Senator Lorraine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation. All of the best. Thank you.